Hi, my name is Emma Raynes. I'm the Director of Programs at the Magnum Foundation. The Magnum Foundation is a small but feisty nonprofit organization. We support diversity and creativity in documentary photography. You know, we have a few different areas of work. Grant making is a primary one, which we'll talk about grant applications later on. We also do mentoring of younger emerging photographers, and we also have a real focus on innovation and thinking about new tools and platforms and new ways of imagining photography in its form and its distribution. We have a photography and social justice program. That's our mentoring program. We get photographers from all over the world and we bring them to New York City. It's a really, actually, while I have you all here, the call is open. If you know young photographers who are really focused on social justice issues, please point them to this opportunity. It's amazing. Our Magnum Foundation Fund is our primary grant-making program. That's where we take proposals from photographers to do work that they're mainly interested in working on. Our emphasis is on experimental work, people who are pushing the boundaries of the field of documentary photography, experimenting with new forms and new approaches and new ways of working. And again, our Photography Expanded program is an area of work that really focuses on innovation. We have laboratories that are encourage interdisciplinary collaboration, photographers working with writers, with poets, with people who are designers, other kinds of, imagine putting photographer with a creative technologist, see what comes out, that's the kind of work that we do. We also have public programming and discussions around these kinds of collaborative, interdisciplinary areas. And Laura.
That's me. So I am the co-founder and executive producer of United Photo Industries. And we are based here. We have our gallery literally across the street. And the idea for us is that we're providing a platform for artists and organizations to put their work out there to a larger audience. As you see from Photoville, we're not about preaching to the converted. We want to reach new audiences. And we also are very much dedicated to cultivating and kind of establishing. You can tell I haven't slept.
How awesome is Photoville, you guys?
No,
it's pretty great.
Thank you. We're really much about partnerships that people wouldn't think about. So, we work with the NYC Department of Transportation. We actually do a lot of public art projects with them. We work with the United Nations, NYC Department of Parks. If you can see, actually on Washington Street, we have a new project. We put boats on ferries. We work with the Presidio. There's a lot of different types of partnerships that we work with. Like I said, we have our gallery. We have our fence that's now in 8 cities across North America. This was a large-scale project we did with the World Humanitarian Summit in Istanbul. We actually produced 17 large-scale exhibitions. That's another install. For 4 years, we were producing exhibitions on the NYC ferries. And they have a ridership of over 10,000 people a day. So that was really wonderful. And actually, that's Doogie Wallace. But the first time we actually worked with Doogie Wallace, Stephen Mallon, it was quite an extraordinary program. Our Washington Street fence, another collaboration with the Department of Transport, and then we have Photoville. And for us, it's really about providing this platform, and we're really proud. I always say we're Switzerland, because we do work. This year we have over 92 exhibitions and over 50 programs, including these ones, and it's all free. And we actually don't have any major underwriter. We have over 200 partners who are contributing to making Photoville happen, which is pretty, and there's only a few of us, believe me, it's only a few of us. And so we really hustle, and we know what it's like to send proposals to 200 people. More actually, because you get a lot of rejections. So, we want to talk about resources and where to look for opportunities. So, I think the success of United Photo Industries for us is thinking outside the box. And you ask, how can Photoville happen? How can a ragtag team with no money, very little resources, make Photoville and everything we do? It's because we talk to elected officials. We actually talk to our business improvement district and partnerships and chambers of commerce. We're actually part of the Brooklyn Chamber of Commerce and the North Brooklyn Chamber of Commerce. We're actually also board members of the Dumbo Business Improvement District. We are part of our community here. We understand we're not taking anything for granted in a growing, developing city. Things are changing, and so if we want to be part of this city, we have to be community members. It's also working with parks, libraries, and city agencies. So when you think about your project, I know a lot of artists, they keep going to galleries. We run a gallery. It's really difficult to get gallery representation. It's really hard to get your work published. So start thinking outside the box. Start thinking about who your audience is. And maybe it's an audience that uses parks and libraries. Maybe it's the local coffee shop. Theatre, music, and visual arts organizations, they have a marketing department. They hire photographers. Also, we have a collaboration with St. Anne's that I actually used to work for St. Anne's. I used to be their GM. Used to be right here. We've been collaborating with them on photo exhibitions to complement the shows they're doing. So depending on where you live, whether you're here in New York or in other places, find out what's going on. Maybe you can put up one of your exhibitions in the lobby of their theater. Also, nonprofits, events, annual reports is a really great way to find work. I keep talking about marketing. A lot of the organizations that we have at Photoville, the reason why they're here is because their marketing teams see this as a really great way to reach new people. So let me tell you, photo departments don't have money. The marketing departments do. So it's just something to think about. Also thinking about all the businesses in your area, artists in other fields, collaboration is a huge thing, graphic designers, musicians, web designers, and then cultural embassies and institutions. So whether you're from a different country, you're from abroad and you want to do something here in New York or somewhere else, you can reach your local embassy. Or if you've been documenting a community somewhere else, reach out to their local embassy. And then local arts councils and foundations are a really great way. The Brooklyn Arts Council is such a great resource. The Lower Manhattan Cultural Council, this is here in New York. We've got NYFA. They're always putting out requests for proposals. There's always job opportunities, teaching programs, and also think about discretionary funding. A lot of places, it's not something they advertise, but if you're doing a project and man, you really need that $1,000 to fly somewhere or put you up, it never hurts to reach out to certain places for discretionary funding, and a lot of these arts councils do have that. And they also fund projects, and then also seminars and workshops. There's a lot of really great resources there.
Yeah, that discretionary funding one is a big one. It's not just the small arts councils that have that, also big foundations do. So they just have, it's like the little extra pocket beyond their formal budget that they have to, as an individual, spend out.
So here's some grant and resources. We'll email this all to you. There's a lot of them. This is just the tip of the iceberg. And then residencies and workspace opportunities. So it's not just about grants. I think a lot of storytellers, photographers, artists need spaces to work and to experiment. And so there's some really great places. And I always say, think outside the box. Don't just look for photography grants. Don't just look for photography residencies. You're all visual storytellers. You're visual artists. So start thinking in a bigger picture. And I think a lot of the artists that we work with, they're really successful. Actually, Nate Larson and Marnie Schindelman, we actually have their work on Dock Street. They're the #gratitude. They do a lot of stuff around the country, and a lot of the stuff has nothing to do with photography grants and workspaces. And then it's always good to keep just looking, like when you have a few hours, start going on to different websites, start looking for requests for proposals. Don't wait for it to pop up on your social media feed or an e-blast, because a lot of the times we do miss them.
Yeah, I mean, and that's just emphasizing, look beyond your social media funnels and also certainly beyond the field of photography. You know, look at, Laura already said this, but I want to really emphasize it, look at grants that are for artists. You know, those granting organizations are really looking to sort of diversify the medium that they're supporting. And those are the ones that may not come up in your feed because you're probably, you know, your friends are photographers, or maybe you're really, you know, getting emails from photography-oriented organizations. So expand.
And, you know, there's the juried calls for submissions. Actually, Photoshelter has a great guide they put out every year on the best juried calls for submission kind of platform. So it's a great resource to look into. And so you should check out who's on the jury. And look, it's a crapshoot. There's always different jury members. There's so many submissions, and there's only so many photographers who can like get on the fence for something else. But it is a good way to look at how to edit your work if you think it's worth it, and also who is on that jury. For the fence, as an example, while the jury process is happening, we get a lot of jury members who contact us going, do you mind if I contact this photographer? I really think it's interesting. So there's some really good opportunities there. International festivals, there are so many photography festivals around the globe. And believe it or not, many of them have more money than us. Actually, I would say most of them have more money than us. And it just start going online and start reaching out to folks and start doing your research, because maybe it might be a good fit. And then group shows is a great way to put your work out there. Now over to you. Group shows. For instance, we have the NYC Street Photography Collective at Photoville this year, and it's a really wonderful group show. This is a group of photographers who've got together to put this on. I've actually had quite a few of our volunteers who are photographers. People have come up to me. They're taking matters in their own hands. And, you know, it is hard to get a solo show, especially in New York City. So a good way to put your work out there is kind of banding together as a group and finding opportunities together. And it's a really good way.
A large part of my job at the Magnum Foundation is reviewing grant proposals that get sent in for various programs that I run. And so I've been looking at a lot of them. I'd say, you know, 7 years of almost 600 proposals a year. So this is kind of like a distilled version of some of my just things that I've become aware of over the past years that have, you know, some indicators of criteria for proposals that are really strong. The first thing I looked for often is a demonstration of in-depth knowledge of the topic in the region that you're working in. This is kind of just really showing me that you know background information about the socio-political issues you're working on, et cetera. And it's not just sort of saying that you've done that research, it's actually showing that you know you can convince me that you really know what you're working on. A clear description of the creative approach that you're working on and why it's effective and unique for that particular project. Why you, this is really important these days, to really describe why you are the person who's the best suited to do this project. Clearly explain the problems and questions you will explore. Demonstrate feasibility regarding time frame and the funding opportunity. This is super important. By creating a budget that shows me that you've actually researched how much it costs to fly from X to Z, you know, showing me that you're not biting off more than you can chew. A lot of photographers will really propose a very big project, but when you do that, it's good to sort of acknowledge that it's big and say that, okay, for this grant opportunity and for the amount of money you're offering, I can do this part of this really large project. That's very responsible. I actually think sometimes it's dangerous when photographers are proposing to do more than they can do. It puts you in vulnerable positions sometimes and makes it so that you can't fulfill what you want to be doing. And so it's really important to, like, the feasibility question. Is this actually possible?
I also want to add that many of us producers and grant givers have been burnt in the past, where we get really excited by a project and a photographer, and then we put a lot in it and into them, and then they don't deliver. And it's not because they don't want to and they haven't tried, is that it was too ambitious. And so when we've had many years of doing it, we now look at those red flags going, man, I really love that, but there's no way they can pull it off. Yeah. So it's really important.
Yeah. Describe how you will position the work in the world, distribution, partnerships. I definitely acknowledge sometimes you don't really know where the work is going when you're in the midst of making it, but showing me in a grant proposal that you are at least really thinking about how the work will be viable in the world and how it will make an impact, how it will reach audiences, shows me that the funding support is going to go towards something that will be actualized because you actually can show that you're thinking that through. It's okay if it changes. Actually, I probably will expect that it changes where the work will be distributed, where it will be placed, but just showing that you actually are really thinking about it is important in the proposal. Why now? I mean, this is a crazy world. It's getting crazier. I think, at least from my perspective, I want to support work that's very relevant and is dealing with the critical issues of today's world. Yeah, I think relevancy is important. Other granting institutions might not be so interested in relevant work, but for me, there needs to be an answer to why this is particularly important to do at this very moment. Yeah, and I think especially for our grants, but this is probably good for anything you're applying to, is kind of how is your work contributing to sort of the canon of photography? Do you know what came before you on this topic? Can you reference that? How are you adding to that? Why is it important for your work to extend beyond what's already been done on this topic? Or formally, how are you advancing the field? How are you pushing boundaries? How are you developing a new approach to portraiture? Are you trying a new tool that's going to expand the field that we're working in? Do I have time to go through? Probably a little bit. Okay. So this is Marko Dubrovnik's proposal. I'll just kind of he is a grantee of ours who allowed us to just share his proposal with you. And I'll just kind of go through some of the points that I feel like are really important that he did well in his proposal. So this is the full thing, and it'll break it down into a couple of points. His work was looking at Yugoslavian nationalism, a resurgence of Yugoslavian nationalism across the region. And, he starts off the proposal by showing that he really knows what the topic, he knows about the particular region. He gets right to what the problems are that he's going to explore. So he really, from the very beginning of the proposal, I don't have to read down to the bottom. At the beginning of the proposal, I know what issues he's going to be trying to tackle. And also right at the beginning, he explains why he's from that region, his family experienced, his family was part of, the former Yugoslavia. It's part of his heritage. It's looking back. That's a very clear sort of he's not just doing this project because he, found it interesting in a book. He has a very important tie to the core of who he is, about why he's doing this project. And this is a really important point. I think when, we're not assigning, when you're writing a grant, you're doing this as a project that's initiated from yourself, and you're not being assigned to do it. It's very personally driven kind of work. And if it's not clear that there's not a real drive for you to do it, it won't get supported. Yeah, so this is like, he's describing his creative approach and why it's unique, why it will be effective. He's specifically saying, I'm going to go to these particular meetings and photograph here, I'm going to take portraits there. It's like, he gets down to the specificity of what exactly he will be doing, and I think that's really helpful for me to imagine him actually doing this project. It's kind of getting at the feasibility thing. Okay, oh yeah, I can see him actually doing this work. And then, he did a really great job explaining why now. I mean, this is a very specific instance of nationalism in Europe, but he brings it back and relates it to this kind of flood of nationalistic feeling around the world. So that's a very nice way of linking a specific thing to a very global, relevant, very much in the now issue. He describes how this work will contribute to society and help people think about nationalism more broadly. Okay, a few more quick tips. Follow the directions outlined in the proposal. I mean, I think it's just really important to do that. If there are problems beyond what's in the direction, I'm happy to answer questions all the time, but if it's a question that could have been answered in the proposal guidelines, that's hard for me to do. I think it's all about creating a compelling representation of your project. Writing a grant proposal is like an art in itself. It's a representational practice. You're representing what you're going to be doing. That said, don't be afraid to ask questions. I'm actually very open to answering questions as long as they're good ones. No, I'm actually really open to answering questions. I'll help people, I'll even help people with writing of the proposal if I can see that they're really keen to work on it. And I really like making it a constructive experience. Use the writing process of the proposal to sharpen your understanding of what you're doing. Yeah, use it as a way to contribute to your practice and in your work. Get people to respond to it, get a friend to look at it. That'll only make your project better, even if you don't end up getting the grant.
I always say get a friend who isn't from the photography world or doesn't know your project very well, because then if they understand it, wonderful. If they don't understand it, then how would this grant giver understand it? So get someone who's not that familiar with what you're doing. It actually is a really good rule of thumb. So presenting your proposal. So your presentation and portfolio are everything. So just remember when you're emailing a producer, curator, editor, grant maker, you have very limited time, especially now, because a lot of the times people are looking at their emails on their iPhones, their tablets, and so be really careful about the things that you attach. Make sure they're not too big, because especially as many people are really busy, they may be looking at in the evening or they're on the train. So if they can't download that image or that document, they may forget about it later and you may never get an email back. So it's just being really smart about the times when you email folks. Weekends is not a good time. But also in the body of the email. And also try and make things, and if you don't have a particular proposal but just want an organization to see your work, make it as creative and streamlined as possible, because many times, especially in our organization, we see work all the time. We may not have anything for you at that point. 6 months later, we get an opportunity, the opportunity we just had at the Washington Street Park fence with the NYC Parks Department. They emailed us in May and said, we want you to put up another fence. I had met with Griselda a few months ago, and I go, I remember her work. So just remember that we're always thinking about things, and so you may not get an answer today, but there may be an opportunity down the line. we're going to talk about budgets and timelines really quickly because it is a big part of your project. And so when you're putting together a budget, especially for a proposal, for a grant, for a big project, an exhibition, or even just when you're trying to think about how to actually plan a commission or doing whatever you're doing, you got to think about your fees, travel and accommodation, per diems if you're traveling, equipment and supplies. Printing and installation is a huge factor. Different vendors, production vendors, designers, web developers. I always say don't underestimate your worth. There's always a disclaimer that you're flexible and willing to negotiate. Because if you put in a number, and some of these grant givers, we've done it, look, after 7 years, I'm now beginning to see my worth and our worth, but there are many times we undervalued ourselves. And then think about contingency. Rule of thumb for every project is 10% of the total amount. And then when you're quoting flights and other line items that fluctuate, you should add a 20% markup to that number. Because usually when you're putting together a grant proposal, you may submit it in April, but it's really for the year later. You know that's going to go up. And they're only going to give you that amount of money that you asked for in April. So things like flights, when we know, but other things like your fee, you know that it's going to stay. Then I have a little example budget. So, we get a lot of proposals, and the artists that send us a 4-line budget, I get really concerned because I feel like they haven't really thought it through. And so this is quite simple, and it's just showing whoever the person is you're asking for money that you're serious about this. You're really taking this, you're going to take their money and you're going to use this to the best that you can. So group it into department staffing, so your artist fee, your assistant, maybe a copy editor. You do a subtotal. Commission and documenting your materials or equipment. Travel and accommodation, the exhibition, and then you do a subtotal and then contingency, and then your project total. Some of you are probably thinking like, duh, of course, but I more than most, we usually get photographers who don't know how to put together a budget. And I'm usually helping photographers and artists on a daily basis do this. And this is just, for a lot of grants, your project you may need $30,000. But this project, this grant may only give you $5,000. And there are a lot of grants, and this is also, and what Emma was telling you, pay attention. Because there are a lot of grant givers who are very specific in what they cover. Sometimes they do not cover artist fees or operational. Sometimes it's really just promotion, or maybe it's exhibitions. So you have to be really careful about reading the fine print. And so what we usually do is we'll give them the entire budget, and then I add another column, which is the grant ask. So it could be a $26,000 budget, but I'm only asking for $7,000, and I'll kind of break out what I'm asking for. And I think it's another way of showing people that you mean business.
Yeah. No, that's great. I think like I said, if you have a really large 10-year project that you're working on, breaking it down into sections, I'll do this piece of the work and this piece of the work, and you can make one big budget that combines it all, but the grants that I give are kind of small, and so they'll probably cover one section of that. And it's okay to show me as the funder the full project. I kind of that's kind of impressive, and yay, I'm excited to be part of something really big, and it looks like you're very serious and committed. That's great. But yeah, breaking off the exact amount that that actually could be covered by my particular opportunity is important.
And then on the bottom, it's really small, so we'll share this with everyone. The proposed income, because also a lot of the times people are asking, well, this is worth $20,000, $30,000. Where is the rest of the money coming from? Mm-hmm. So usually you can go another grant, a foundation, print sales, earned income. It could be that you're working other jobs that you're going to contribute to this project yourself, and then you put on the bottom their contribution. And so again, as people who are going to invest in this, it makes me feel a lot better that you're actually going to do this. I don't want to give you $5,000, $10,000 and then you couldn't find the other 20. So it's a good way of doing it. And then your timeline. This is something that we always talk about, being realistic, and Emma was talking about it. So factor in holidays and major events. That's a big thing, you know, the Jewish holidays, school public holidays, weekends. It's really important to think about it. Consult multiple sources when planning for extended trips regarding travel time. If you think, you know, Google Maps, they'll give you like, this takes 2 hours, but if you're driving in a big vehicle, it'll take 4. Think about parking. If you think a project will take 2 weeks, add another week to it.
Yeah.
Just always. And then manage expectations regarding deliverables. I think that if you feel like someone's asking you for an unrealistic deadline, be upfront and be flexible, but have that conversation sooner rather than later. Because most of the time, folks are they're flexible. And then to wrap up, we've been talking about do your research, know who your client is and their audience, in addition to your own. Present budgets and timelines that you're confident working in. Be flexible. Don't overestimate fees and expenses. Always follow through and update on future projects and new work. And the most important thing that we say is be patient. Mm-hmm. Things don't happen instantly, but they will happen. So that's Gilbert. It's at the mayor of Photoville.
Do we have a mic for questions? Oh,
yeah, there's a microphone. Any questions? Oh.
How many pages should a proposal be?
1. I mean, I think it depends. You should really look at the granting organization's requirements. They usually say, like, how long they want it to be. But I think, you know, probably as a rule of thumb, like 1 page is probably good because usually, you know, imagine yourself sifting through 200 applications and, you know, yeah, and getting to the point right at the top is going to be helpful in that regard too. If there are a lot of applications and you can imagine one individual sitting and reading through, you really want to know what the project's about before you seep into the rest of the grant. So yeah, like I said, that first, you know, paragraph is really important in those grant proposals. No.
Mike's coming.
If you have an idea that you like to do as a collaboration, but you're new to the photography and artistic community, could you present that to you, and would you help that person get that thing off the ground, or would the person have to wait until they kind of get into the community and then present the idea to you?
I mean, I think, to be honest, I mean, for us, for over 7 years, we've worked with a lot of artists that it was the first time they've shown work. If it's the right project, the right story, we know who the audience is, we find the funding, it's realistic, then we would always consider it. But I think that there's so many different factors when leading up to that yes. And so it never hurts to pitch ideas and to start talking about it. There's a lot of really great networking places online, in person. I mean, Photoshelter does these third Thursdays in their space in Union Square, which are amazing. And so there's some really great places that you can network and start talking to people about these projects.
Thank you very much.
With a lot of documentary projects, it seems like you can do all of your research, but there's a certain extent to which you figure out what you're really trying to say once you get there and you're on the ground and shooting the project. So I'm wondering how you kind of address that ambiguity in something like a grant proposal.
Yeah, that's a super great question. Documentary work is all about kind of a lot of the time responding to certain things that happen while you're in the community you're working with or when you reach there. That's really, really great to mention that. I think you can show that you've done the research, and I think the best thing to be is honest about what you're hoping to explore, like what are the questions, what is intriguing you about it, and if you can really kind of delve into like, these are the questions I'm hoping to explore while I'm working there, and I'm going to kind of develop it further once I go. That's the best way to do it. I think it's more exciting to fund things that have questions about them than all of these certainties, and I think funders will pick up on the fact that you've done research enough to have really good questions.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
There's also one
I just have a quick question. Going back to you said about sharing work with editors or people via email or something. You said that to watch like attachment size and that kind of thing. I mean, I always get a different answer from different people because everybody has different what they want. But what is the best way to show like images? If it's a PDF, if it's embedding in the email, like what do you think is the best way that is most accessible to people that are using their iPhones and iPads to just be able to look at work that you send to people?
So sometimes I've heard editors and other people actually turn off, there's an option on your phone, you can turn off images because it takes up too much space. For us, I always like a link to something because it's easy to find. If it's a PDF and it's larger than 5 megabytes, it's hard to open. But again, you're right, people have different, they like something different. And I think if you're meeting an editor, if you meet a curator or a grant giver and you meet them for the first time and they go, email me, you can go, how would you like me to email you? And it's just ask them. And I think most of the time they'll appreciate that question. So that's something to do. One more question?
Be polite on email.
Very polite.
I got an email once that said like, "Hey ladies." Anyway, I'm kidding, but like, it's good to be a little bit formal and clear in email and leave the informality to texting your friend.
This question's for Emma. I have a nonprofit. An approved New York State vendor. I haven't applied for New York City yet. Can you talk about how you were able to exhibit images on the ferry, things like that? Did you say that was through New York City Department of Education, Transportation, or New York State?
Oh, that was me. It's NYC Ferries.
Uh-huh.
So it's NYC Waterways. They are a city agency.
Okay.
And it was because, again, it's hustling and trying to reach as many different places. So we actually started having a relationship with them at the first Photoville. They showed work at the first Photoville, and we got to know them. And it literally happened over a drink in our beer garden. We joked, let's put some photos in your ferry. And they were like, let's do it. And then a few weeks later, they followed up and said, hey, we were serious. And so that's how it happened. So relationships, partnerships, being nice, friendly, it really does make a difference.
So you didn't go through official channels then?
We did go through official channels. Once they said they liked the idea, there was a lot of proposals, it was through the city, and we had to get a certificate of insurance, permitting. There was a lot that went through that, but it was the first time something like that has ever happened on one of those ferries.
Was it a procurement? Do you know? Procurement order?
I can talk to you about that later.
Okay. Thank you.
We can go through. There's a lot of minutes. There's a
Yes,
lot of
I-
detail.
I'm totally
we
aware
can be
of
here
that.
all day.
Absolutely.
But I think, Emma and I, it's our information. We're pretty, we're very flexible, we're open. Maybe the next 2 weeks, you probably won't get a response from me.
You will from me, though. I don't do anything.
You're just lounging around. But thank you so much, and we're really serious, and we really want to make sure that photographers give themselves a chance to be successful, and we want to be here to help.
Yeah, this is really important because I want collectively to help improve the potential to propose and share your ideas clearly. And so I'm really open to helping anyone who's interested in improving the way they write or how they present their ideas. So
Yeah. So thank you, and Jamel Shabazz is next. So thank you so much.